Welcome back to The Cable Climb. I'm your host, Brady Volpe, and in this series, we explore how broadband professionals advance in their careers, sharing real stories and lessons learned along the way. Today, we're chatting with Andy Parrott, President and CEO at Vyve Broadband. Everyone I run into has nothing but great things to say about Andy, not only his technical skills, but also his great sense of humor and personal skills. We're going to dive deeper into what has helped Andy throughout his career help him climb the cable ladder. So sit back and enjoy this episode. Andy, welcome to the Cable Climb. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Brady. It's great to be here.
I guess I'd like to start off just understanding, how did you stumble into the cable industry? What was your start?
Well, my father said I couldn't take the summer off when I graduated from high school and that I needed to get a job, and suggested that the cable shop up the road had a sign that said help wanted. And so I went over and, back then in, it would have been 1993, applied, filling out my little paper form, and then getting a phone call, I think either that day or the next day, and going over and just telling them everything I needed to tell them in the interview, because my old man was not going to take me having a summer off as an option. I was planning to go to Indiana Wesleyan University in Marion, Indiana, that fall. But yet when I did the interview, and it's like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And to be honest with you, Brady, I think I may have kind of said, hey, I'm looking to stay in this industry and continue to grow and just learn as much as I can. And didn't happen to mention that I was only looking for a summer job. So, that's a little bit of guilt I have today, but I think it's worked out pretty well. So during that, I applied to be an installer, and probably within 48 hours, I was riding shotgun in a truck of another tech, just kind of learning the ropes, and absolutely fell in love with the job, with the variety, with being face to face with people, to a point that by the end of the summer, I had let the cable company I worked for know that I was going to go off to school and wanted to come back next summer. And they're like, Andy, you just can't leave. This is, you're a natural. We'll give you a raise. We'll give you a promotion. I'm like, nah, I can't do it. We'll throw everything we can at you. And then they went a step further and said, all right, Andy, we'll pay for your school.
That's nice.
Stay local. There was a few universities there in town, and said, we'll work around your schedule. Let's keep you on the payroll, and you find a way to balance both, school and and this opportunity. I'm still, no, I don't think that's not probably the right fit for me. And it was really days before my last day that I was doing an install. And at the time of the install, I talked to the guy, and he had just hung his degree from Indiana Wesleyan on his wall, which triggered a conversation. It was like, wow, I'm heading there. I've already met my roommate, got the dorm, got my class schedule set. I mean, I'm all in. And he goes, yeah, I love it. It was great experience. And he goes, yeah. He goes, how do you like what you're doing? He goes, oh, I love this job. And then the guy says, well, do you mind if I ask what you're making? I said, yeah, this is what I'm making. And they're like, are they hiring? And they go, yeah, they're hiring to replace me. So I can go to school to hang the thing on the wall that you have in hopes of job. And it was at that moment, I said, you know what? Maybe I'd be 4 years ahead in my career. Maybe I'd have, enough saved up to buy a house. These were, as a teenager, these are kind of things that you kind of think about and just go, maybe this is the career for me. And, I went back and told my father, I said, Dad, I think I'm not going to go to school. I think I'm going to stay in this.
He pushed you, right? He pushed you into that job. And I mean, what was it that you liked about being, doing the installation job?
I like the variety. I probably, typical kind of ADD kind of person. I have to always have a challenge. I always have to have something different. And it's not like working in an assembly plant where you just come in and you do the same thing over and over. That drives me crazy, the repetitiveness. In this industry, the things that we do. And then, by the way, my father said it was the worst mistake of my life. Nobody stays with their first job out of high school. They go 3, 4, 5 jobs before they figure out really what they want to do in life. And for me to throw away my life to be in this crazy small, because there
industry
was
that we love.
industry that we love. There wasn't high speed data. There really, digital hadn't even really launched yet. So there weren't really, a whole lot of optical nodes existing at the time. So this was just analog, basic video. And he said it was a foolish thing I would be doing, and that he didn't support it at all. So, yes, the grit and determination to prove him wrong, I think, helped me.
There's some stubbornness there too. Then I'm sensing
the stubbornness that you get, and it probably carried me in because it was up in Michigan, and being an on-call technician at 3 a.m. after the snow plows have taken all the pedestals out, and you're out there just kind of chipping away with a pickaxe, trying to get outages back on in negative 10-degree weather. And there were moments you're like, what am I doing? This isn't as easy as it was when I was just the installer and working my way through that, those early days of upgrades and just the blood, sweat, and tears that come with this job, that you have to respect the people that are out there doing it every day. But it carried me to just have the determination to continue to, make something and do, to your point, the cable climb. And, just try and be the hardest working person I could be in the room at any time. And more importantly, bring value. Like, I want to make sure anywhere I'm at, people, are glad to see me, and that, that their job's going to get a little bit easier. Now that I'm kind of picking up a shovel and going shoulder to shoulder to get things restored, in any part of my career.
Yeah. And I think, you mentioned like you had the opportunity to go to college. You didn't go to college. Was that something that you ever, at any point, you look back and you regretted not doing that?
Well, I did. I ended up going to night school, and I'd sit in the back of the room with a radio, and dispatch would have to call in, and I'd have my work orders in the back, and sometimes have to tell a professor that there's an outage and I had to leave, and I promised I'd make up for it, or ask another student to kind of record what I'm missing. But it took me years, right? Kind of going through the journey from, a handful of different schools, moving around. But staying in school has been something important to me, and something I still try and do. And now I'm working with my daughter, who's a junior in high school, and going on campus tours and talking about, what she's looking for in school and what she's going to do in life. And just encouraging her to, do something that brings purpose and joy. That's, doesn't have to be, whatever path that is for her. So it's, I have no regrets at all. I really don't. I think it was, it was the path that was best for me. And I don't look back. Sometimes you kind of look back and go, did I miss, some part of that journey? But I think the rewards far outweigh any gaps I have from missing out.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So tell me, what was your next step from being an installer? Where did you go from there in your career?
Well, from an installer, if you kind of go through the regular progression of an installer to a service tech to a maintenance tech, kind of being on call, being the person that put in 80 hours a week, for years at a time, to, working your way into a supervisor position or a lead position, lead tech at the time. And, starting, like I said, in West Michigan, ultimately, running, a handful of communities across West Michigan, and getting an invitation to go, and, very, very excited about what we did, and excited about the team that we built, and to the point of moving to Texas. And we had, I was with Charter at the time when Charter was a startup during this journey, and just having, people like Jerry Kent, the founder of Charter, the founder of Suddenlink, as a mentor. Yep. You just kind of strive to, to follow in those footsteps as much as possible. And continue to work, running the technical operations departments across the state, and to a point where I was given an invitation to join a startup after Jerry Kent had sold Charter to Paul Allen, and they did an IPO. He had exited, and to join a group called Sequel 3, and that was a management team, and being kind of one of the founding members of that startup. It was employee 14 of what ended up becoming this great team of leaders that were working on fixing assets that other private equity firms were managing, because they were managing a group called Classic Cable at the time. So this would have been 2003, 2004. And then doing a bunch of other acquisitions to a point where we bought 20% of Cox Communications. That gave them the funding needed to go private. They were publicly traded back then, and buying about 250,000 subscribers back from Charter, and creating a company called Suddenlink Communications. And at the time,
I remember Suddenlink. I didn't realize Cox had gone public. I thought that they had always been a private company through its entirety.
No, we bought systems from the Carolinas to California to their Mid-America region at the time, across Texas and Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Arkansas, and integrated those. Those were kind of mostly their tier 2 systems, and created just a fantastic journey as Suddenlink, and was able to do that for well over a decade. And we sold that company a couple times, but the last time was to Patrick Drahi, and which became Altice. Yep. And Altice USA, and I got to spend 4 years with the Altice team, and that's where the last name Perot, before we started.
Yes.
Conversation from worked with a lot of French peers, and enjoyed that journey. It taught me many things, and then getting the opportunity to create this mega broadband investments group, and join here, and doing the acquisitions of Northland Cable and Eagle Communications and Vyve Broadband, and then putting it all under the umbrella of Vyve. So joined as the COO of that startup kind of group, and for the last year plus, I've been the CEO and president, and just enjoying the journey through that growth, from being a CEO, corporate executive of Suddenlink, to a senior executive of Altice, and then being a chief officer for Vyve in this journey, and just been I tell people I never forget where I came from. I started in this industry for $6.12 an hour. I'm not anybody's nephew. I'm trying to prove that through this journey, making sure that we have career path programs for everybody. We've had great partnerships with SCTE. At Suddenlink, we actually were the first major cable operator to have 100% of their technical staff SCTE certified. Today, through Altice, we had a really good program as well with SCTE certifications and self-progression steps, which I've carried on through here at Vyve. So any entry-level position at Vyve, the first couple progressions within their career are all self-guided. They're all either through partnerships with NCTI or SCTE, and or CCNA programs for our engineering positions. So everybody has a path to take my job, and I always tell people, preferably when I'm done with it. But
so a new technician, or maybe a tech that feels like they're kind of stuck, that is an installer, what would be your advice, whether they're working for your company or working for another cable operator, to move their career forward on the cable climb, so to speak?
So going back to the cable climb, which is the point of this whole thing, is first, if you're part of the journey, and I know that Tom Monahan's at Charter, Chris Whitaker, when she was with Time Warner as a CLO. Everybody really put these things together. Ed Marchetti, he's kind of retired, but he's had these ambassador programs. Talking to Guy McCormick when he was over at Cox, like all the cool things that they're doing. A lot of us really embrace both the SCTE and these progression steps that we have. But if it's not preset, I've always find that the conversation with whoever your boss is, like you shouldn't wait 12 months to sit down and have a review. You should, at a minimum, every quarter, sit down and go, Brady, what do I need to do, and how am I performing, and what do you, at the end of the year, if you sat down with me in my review, what would I need to be doing for you to go, wow, Andy, you've just crushed it this year. You have completely exceeded my expectations, because that's my goal. And if I wait until one time a year to have that conversation, then shame on me, versus this is what I aspire to. This is really what is important to me, but I want to exceed your expectations. And having the clear goals and working for somebody that says, Andy, you achieve this, this, and this. This is what you're going to need to do to go to the next level. Well, then let me go do that. And then let me check in on a regular basis on how I'm achieving that. Because I may think I'm crushing it, and the person I work for may be on a completely different, like, no, you're over here on this, focused on things that really aren't as important. Like I got the shiniest cable, and I'm cleaning my F connectors on the outside, and I'm putting WD-40 and wiping down the cable. I may work hard, but it's not getting the results. And that was what I was going to ask you. Like, what if it's the opposite? What if I come to you and say, Andy, I've been working my butt off. I really think I should be a maintenance tech now. And you say, well, Brady, you've just not been doing what I've expected of you. What do I do then if I'm not doing the right thing? Brady, sir, boss, I'm out pulling pads every day trying to make sure my levels are optimum. You're like, no, what are you doing? You're taking a customer. We joke and say, our technicians are arsons by day and fighters by night. Right? Yeah. So we're out there, we're going, I'm the best tech I know, because I'm out there checking noise, I'm pulling pads, I'm doing maintenance. Oh, I found a bad piece of cable. I'm just going to go ahead and cut that down.
In the middle of the day.
Like in the middle of the day, and going, I am crushing it, but yet, obviously, from a different perspective, you're like, you're the worst tech we have.
It's all perspective.
It's all perspective, and I'm out there thinking I'm just doing it. So really having clear expectations, success measurements are super important on anybody's individual cable climb, and it's okay to ask and go,
communication,
and set expectations, and then check back in. Don't just wait. And it drives me crazy. People will be like working all year round, and then getting a small bump for, cost of living. That's not the journey. That's not what you should be focused on.
Yeah.
So, yes.
So if I want that next job, I should really be talking to you or talking to my manager about how am I doing? Am I setting myself up for that next job? And then getting the feedback. Am I doing what is right, or what is setting me up for the next job?
There's an old book, and this is called The 1 Minute Manager, and it just sticks in my head whenever we have similar conversations. And they have an analogy in the book where, your boss or your coach or whoever that is that's leading you takes you bowling. And the art of bowling is super boring, right? You just grab a ball. And the only reason it gives people joy is the instant response and gratification of my adjustments and getting my goal of knocking 10 pins down. And then they say, well, what if you put a curtain, right, and a sheet in front of the pins halfway down there, and you just threw the ball? The art of bowling is pretty boring.
It's pretty a boring game at that point.
Pretty boring. But then you go, well, now put your boss, right, put your manager where it's standing at the sheet where you can see the pins and see the bowler, and then go, all right, you got 5. Go to the left a little bit, and you got 7, and then go to the right a little bit more. Now you got 10, and they're out there cheering for you. You'd have just as much excitement throwing a damn ball down to, where you can't see the results. And I think technicians have that same, they're not seeing the response on a repeat rate or the reliability of the network and what the customers are, and being able to share that and be those leaders to go and say, this maintenance, we were getting so many phone calls on whether certain types of KPIs, like this node is getting, 20% more phone calls in this node than anywhere else, but you went out and did a maintenance, you used, P&M or some other cool tools that people like you were out there really honing in and going, you found the impairment. By the way, we're now you're getting 20% less calls in this node from what you've done. And we do a hard job of reverting that back to the technicians and patting them on the back. And I'm equally guilty. We try and do node health, and we do these other kind of incentives. But I think that gets lost. And I think, that's something as a cable climb, going and saying, is my action truly resulting in the success of our business and our customers? And
I love the bowling analogy. That's brilliant. That's a great analogy of how a manager can really influence the positivity or lack thereof for one of their technicians. That's fantastic.
That's it. And that's the only one that sticks in my head, because you just, especially if you're in a maintenance role in your career, you're just not face to face with those customers. So you're not necessarily getting that really great feedback that the manager has visibility to that the techs really don't. So, and it's their responsibility, my responsibility, to make sure that we're those managers standing at that, at that sheet in between the bowling lane, giving them that encouragement.
So you talked about mentors, and you mentioned mentors that have really been valuable for you. What can technicians do to maybe find mentors or understand the value of mentors that can help guide and influence their growth?
Yeah. So I'm a huge ambassador of SCTE local chapters.
Oh, that's a great recommendation.
If you can plug into a chapter, if you can find a way and say, please, can I give you a just quota? There's a technical training, but I think the mentorship of, people reaching out and having connections, not just with other operators or peers in their group that they typically don't have an opportunity, but even partners like you and test and measurement vendors that are out there, and build that relationship up and go, I know I can find this, what does this mean? And being able to say, I don't know anybody that won't take a technician's call and go, Brady, hey, I'm out here in the field and I'm seeing this.
Yep.
Have you ever seen anything like this before? And if so, what was the trigger? What caused this impairment? And you were like, hey, yeah, great. Even if it's a text message, even if it's a chat or an email, having this network of people that have been there before you and being a mentor, they don't have to be a formal mentor. They can just be a mentor in the moment and go, Andy, yes, I've seen that impairment. This is what happens. It's called common path distortions, and you have a similar metal. And, oh, by the way, here's what triggers it and why you find it at the end of the tap, and why when you touch a screwdriver to the seizure screw and you short it, it disappears for a while, then it comes back 3-4 days. Like all these kind of things that they're hard to find in the book. But when you're out there dealing with it live, you're like, am I imagining things? What's happening here? And how do I get this, this impairment remedied? Because I'm sure I'm not the first person that's seen it. So yes, the local chapters is probably the number one mentorship. If you don't have infrastructure in place, we have them across the country. And by all means, anybody that's watching this can reach out to me directly. Make sure to put my email address down, Brady, if somebody has trouble finding me. But happy to point anybody in the right direction for mentorship, or somebody I know personally. And as I know you would do the same for anybody.
Absolutely. And you're also on LinkedIn. Your information is on LinkedIn, so you can easily find you there. But I think, the SCTE chapters is such a good recommendation because it's an easy way to meet people. So great recommendation, Andy. And I think the important thing is also, don't be afraid to ask. When you find something new or something you don't understand, you just got to, like you said, reach out and ask people. If you're stuck in your own head with like, what is this noise? This something new, something I don't understand. You're not going to learn if you don't ask people. get out there.
You're spot on. There are 3 words that will guarantee your success. All right, and the 3 words that a lot of people don't know how to say, and that is, I need help. Yes,
absolutely.
You have the empowerment, which believe it or not, it's difficult for many people to raise their hand and go, I need help. This isn't connecting with me. And those that have the ability to ask are the ones that have the superpower, because there is a swarm of people looking to help people that just need to raise their hand and ask.
I so much agree with you, especially in this industry, because so much of what we do, there's a lot of like tribal knowledge around it. Whether you went to college or didn't go to college, even if you went to college, what we do in this industry is not taught in college. It's learned on the job.
Yeah.
So as far as like, you mentioned the SCTE and the chapters and stuff, do you recommend any particular skills or training or certifications from the SCTE that might be valuable for technicians?
No, absolutely. And, you start with the they call the BPI, the broadband premise installer. Then you got the BDS, which is broadband distribution, which is kind of that same, and then transport. So going along those journeys, there's a fiber course. By the way, anybody watching this that works for an operator that is currently part of Cable Labs gives everybody full seats to 100% of the SCTE content, and I think it's one of the most underused advantages if you're, Cox or Comcast, Charter, any of these major operators, all of them, nearly all of them, are Cable Lab members and have a full access seat to 100% of the training content, and I'm sure there's a certification element to that as well. And if you don't know within your own operator, I'm great friends with everybody, happily connect you with somebody that knows the answer, whether it's, Abby Odell at Charter or anybody over at, like I said, at Cox or Comcast. They all have a great program that's available for everybody.
Yeah, and like you said, if you don't know, ask. It's just gotta ask. So you said you started in '93. I also started in the cable industry in '93, and there have been a lot of changes. What do you think has been like the biggest change for you from an evolution standpoint in the cable industry since you started in '93?
If I had to put a milestone, I would say, boy, there's been some major ones.
Yeah.
Obviously, the launch of high-speed data was a major milestone. And that was in the probably mid to late 90s. We had telco return, so it was even before DOCSIS, Terion and 3Ms and all these different platforms that we were able to use. The digital transition for video was a big, everybody getting DTAs and having multi channels of HBO and none of that existed in going through that milestone. Working with some deployments of HD. So most people don't know Mark Cuban was those familiar with who Mark Cuban is. I think everybody is.
Shark Tank, if you don't.
Mavericks, was an ambassador for high definition, and he launched HDNet.
I did not know that.
He launched HDNet and HD movies, and created the first broadcasting a high definition video, and then he stood up the first live sports production trucks that could broadcast in high definition. And he had even done a small investment in a Charter at the time. And I remember working with him and doing the first high definition launch in northern Dallas, in his hometown, and being able to just for the first time be able to see high definition video. People just like going, wow.
It's like I got those HD glasses.
Yeah, like unbelievable. And I remember that being a big milestone. Suddenlink was the first operator to deploy 1 gig DOCSIS. So that was in near the Ozarks in Ozark, Missouri. Was the first system, and Nixa, Missouri, side by side, to deploy 1 gig, and being able to say, we couldn't test 1 gig. I think we actually partnered with Cable Labs, and there was maybe a tablet that had a 1 gig interface, but PCs didn't have it. This was early on, and going, great, you say you have it, but not a single customer knows that you have it because there's nothing that could even support it. Nothing could send it, and working with Ookla and others and going,
even couldn't speed test at that time.
There was no speed test that existed. And you go, all right, we think we have it, but we have to prove. And I remember our head of PR at Suddenlink was very concerned. He goes, no, what if the press come in and go, well, show us. How are we going to prove it to them? And I said, here's what we'll do, and here's how we set that up. But I remember that being a major milestone. We're using 32 DOCSIS QAMs on a DOCSIS 3.0 platform. So being able to support 50 meg up and doing higher modulations in return to make sure how clean your plant had to be to support that. And that was a major milestone. And then I would say the next major milestone would be post-pandemic or the pandemic, and how the industry
That's a good
changed.
point. Yes.
Yeah. And, where, the two things that ran out first apparently were toilet paper and laptops, and trying to, get everybody to work remote. And I remember shooting a video talking about, how do you go to a door in the early days of the pandemic? Yeah. People like needing to study from home, the demand for high-speed data drastically changed, where it's a lifeline product and not a luxury. And even now today,
it hasn't changed since then. It's still
like if it's out, it has to be on within hours. Like if you have a squirrel, or 2 idiots in a backhoe, like the customer expectation of how lost they are when they lose their connection is it's never been greater. And like I said, post pandemic, people working from home. You and I, I'm working from home.
Work from
right?
home. Yeah.
We're dependent on our broadband connection, more so than you can shut my gas off. You can probably turn the water off at my house, but you lose the broadband connection, and the whole household is in a panic.
So those are, I always thought DOCSIS was the major change, but I think you really introduced some changes that I really wasn't considering. So for those entering the industry today, like a technician starting out as an installer, and I think you would really know this better than most people I talk to, because you're, like you said, you're running a company, you're working with a lot of technicians who are coming in. Do you think it's drastically different than when you became a technician and started on your first day?
It is. The same RF 101 is the same. So there are elements that are drastically different. Resources are different. We talk about just-in-time knowledge. You can take your phone and get the answers. You can get a YouTube clip. You got people out there in these SCTE chapters that are doing kind of 101. Or if I have a test piece of equipment, I can go get the answers. Boy, I would have loved to have that. Or we have fixed outages where I basically just asked the technician, I said, just go on Teams, share your camera, show me what you're looking at. Now show me your meter, or show me in the head end. Yeah. What's the light look like? All right, go to the back. Here's here's how you reboot this box, or here's what you need to be looking for. The virtual, support that's there, just put your ear pods in, and I joke that I'm going to get hard hats that actually have a place to mount their phone, so they
that's not a bad idea.
Just put your hands out, put this on, let us walk you through, and be able to get outages on that typically would have required somebody to drive half hour, an hour to get on site, to be side by side, to get people. I would have loved to have tools like that. But, something about learning the hard way, I think, allowed us to be patient, because it wasn't this stressful. I think if your broadband connection was out, or your video connection, it allowed you to make mistakes, and those mistakes, I think, people don't have the patience for.
Yeah.
So you got to learn faster. You got to get it on faster. Mean time to repair is a major milestone kind of KPI that we strive for. And, we've got escalation processes and making sure nobody's on an island. So it has changed, but I think it's changed for the better. I think I'm not to say it's easier, but and I think more people aren't learning the RF
No.
my ham radios KC8 OOX back in the day. I mean, all the things we had to learn on the RF side of the network, which still exist, is just done with happy face, frowny face, responses on a meter, like green. This is green. This is red. All right, replace the part between the red and green spot, and and not necessarily understand the why, but then again, we can make it that easy, so it can get on that much faster.
It is an interesting perspective because when you and I started, there was no Google. We didn't have phones. I mean, we didn't have a lot of different technology, but we were probably given a little bit more time because we had to look it up in a book or talk to someone who knew to do the things that people today are expected. You need to look it up immediately and find it out immediately. So I really don't know which is harder. The way we had to do it manually, or the way people have instant access to everything today. So that is an interesting perspective. So my final question for you, Andy, looking back, what advice would you give your younger self if you were starting your career today?
It's a good question. What advice would I give myself? There have been moments where I made life changes for the career, and I'd go back and tell my younger self, like, it's okay to take the risk. I think some people, if they're adamant on the cable climb, I've worked with people that say it's okay to get out of your comfort zone if you can. So going from one side of Michigan to the other side and being 100 miles away from home, and then going from Michigan to Texas, and just knowing just the natural fear of the unknown and being on an island and just going, hey, I'm so passionate about this industry. I really want to go follow where the opportunities are and where it's going to really grow, my knowledge and my career versus, I think people on the cable climb are standing on the rung, and the only way they're going to go up a rung is somebody on the rung above them
pushed off
or retires, and then everybody gets to go up one rung, and that's great for people that are happy and joyful being on that journey. But those that are anxious, it's okay to move. It's okay to, get out of your comfort zone. I've, and it has done me well, but there have been many nights just stressed. Like, am I making a big mistake? And at the end of the day, those have opened up more relationships that I treasure, that I would have never had, and the people that are in this industry and they get to know, had I not made those moves and been comfortable going, I'm going to go chase this opportunity, and I think this opportunity is going to bless my life and fill me with greater joy. I would do that all over, but I would probably even be more aggressive, because it's just every time I've done something like that has just been a great opportunity for me.
That's awesome. I thought you were going to say, "Oh, I would have taken it easier. I would have taken the path less traveled." You're like, "Oh, I'm going to dive in and be even more aggressive." That's a man who has really enjoyed his career. I appreciate that, Andy.
Right. Yeah, but sometimes you take it safe, and you're like, I think I'll be very uncomfortable. Yeah. But ask for help, and it's okay jumping into something that you don't have to know all the answers. And that's been something that kind of scares me a little bit, but then going, you know what, there's no other way to learn it. Like you said, there's not a book on your career and what it's going to hold, but be very transparent. Don't pretend to be something you're not. And, it's okay to get it wrong sometimes. So I am an imperfect person. I make mistakes all the time. But I embrace them. I learn from them, and just go, well, we're not going to do that way again. So and that would be the one thing I encourage people to ask for help. Once again, it's going to go back to the key 3 words in your cable climb.
That is a lot of great advice. Thank you so much, Andy. So that brings us to the end of this episode of The Cable Climb. A huge thanks to Andy Parrott, for sharing his experiences, insights, and advice on how to rise through the ranks in broadband. I hope his story inspires you to keep pushing forward in your own career journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss an update. And if you have any questions for Andy or suggestions for future guests, drop them into the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and remember, keep climbing. I'll see you the next time on The Cable Climb.